Greg, how many wolves have you killed?
Over 200, a little bit over 200.
You got to know the exact number.
207.
So, Greg, we've talked about it a little bit over the years, guiding together, but it's funny because the wolf subject in my life comes up all the time. Any lodge where you're guiding, just in like day-to-day conversation. It actually came up in the interview that I did with Rogan, so people bring it up to me all the time. And it's funny because I feel like I have a very baseline understanding of wolves. Like I spent a fair amount of time in Canada around them. I know the Colorado hunting scene, the wilderness scene there, and I kind of have speculation what's going to happen with the hunting and livestock and everything else. But I'm just like everybody else. I don't have like a depth of knowledge on them. And every time I talk to you, I'm like, this is the guy. Like, this is the guy. He's killed over 200 of them, and he dealt with it in other states. So I got to actually have, like, the deep conversation with you about him. So
cool.
That's the plan, man.
Yeah.
And let's start with that, dude. Like, give the viewers and listeners a little bit of your background. Like, where you start, what got you into it, and then, what, I guess, because you haven't really ever told me this, like, what the job that you got yourself into hunting wolves, what was the like mandate and purpose,
So my situation was unique, which helped me out tremendously because I grew up ranching. I was 5th generation on a ranch in a canyon. It was steep, rocky. We raised our own horses. I was shooting our own horses at 14 and ran that ranch for about 20 years. So I had quite a in-depth knowledge of livestock and husbandry.
Sure.
Understood the cattle end of it, the horse end of it, the livestock end of it. And so that kind of set my base for what was to come. And then I also started trapping probably when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Had 3 traps, trapped muskrats, and then just worked up from there.
Sure.
And so when I left the ranch at 35, I applied for a federal job with Wildlife Services. At that time, it was ADC, but they're under USDA banner and USDA APHIS. And so I applied for that job, and I did a temporary stint in Washington on a coyote program, and then was lucky enough to get a job in the southern end of the county I grew up in. And that county was just almost 11,000 square miles, had a trapper in the south, trapper in the north. I did that, and it was a coyote lion program, and I did that for, I think, 18 years. And aerial gunner, a lot of aerial gunning, stepped into the private sector and did 4 to 5 years on the private gunning with helicopters to try and fix problems that the government was not fixing in the coyote realm. So not only had the fixed wing gunning, got into the helicopter gunning, and then Idaho called, and one of the pilots there said, hey, our gunner retired, can you cover till we find somebody? And I said, sure. This went on for about a month, and we were coming in one day to the hangar, and he said, boss man's waiting to talk to you. You want to make you an offer. So I went to work for Idaho, and one of the aspects of wanting to work for Idaho is they had wolves, and I knew that they had a management program. They were taking wolves. There was a lot of investigations. There was a lot of conflict, and I knew that if I stayed in Oregon, I probably would not get to
deal with the wolves.
To deal with the wolves in the aspect of that Idaho, Wyoming, Montana do. They're fairly aggressive.
But all these other programs you work for, the coyote stuff, the stuff you didn't, they were all. Were they predators? Like, were they management programs, like from a predator suppression standpoint, or were they always oriented around livestock conflict?
It was a livestock conflict thing. 95% of the time.
Yeah. So
it was always dealing with damage.
Okay. So it was never a like a game management.
They've
we
had
need
those
to- we
programs
want to suppress coyotes for
the mule deer
higher
or the
mule deer
antelope.
recruitment. So that was not you worked all in conflict stuff
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Okay.
Our agency has had those programs to where Fish and Game puts in money. We need coyotes taken in certain areas where mule deer numbers are down or antelope numbers are down.
Yeah.
And we had done those in the past, and that kind of ended when I come on. So
Yeah.
all of my stuff was like, it wasn't going out there and trying to take how many coyotes you could kill. It was, you have to kill the coyote.
Yeah,
you
the
know,
conflict one.
The conflict
I
one.
gotcha.
You know, if I kill 28 and I don't stop that, I haven't done my job.
Yeah,
if I kill one and it stops that killing, I've done my job.
Yeah, so that's the ideal. That's
Yeah.
what you're shooting
Yeah.
for all the time.
Yeah.
So in a way though, you had perfect timing, right? Because
Yeah.
the wolf during this period of time, even like nowadays everybody's thinking about Colorado, but it really the establishment of the wolves in Idaho, it's recent history.
Oh yeah, they were introduced in '95.
Yeah.
You know, they come in '95 under the banner of experimental non-essential species.
Yeah.
And they still hold that banner. But everybody has this idea that they are under the Endangered Species Act as an endangered species, but they are labeled non-essential, experimental. And so Idaho had just basically taken over the management end of the wolves in Idaho when I come on, which took a lot of red tape, which took a lot of BS out of the picture.
Sure.
You know, and Idaho had it, they gave it back, Idaho got it back again, and that's about the time I came on. And so
your timing was like,
it's perfect.
in many ways.
Absolutely.
You didn't have to sit there thinking that you had a job, like, hey, we're going to go shoot some wolves, but it actually takes 6 years for all the...
Yeah, right, exactly.
You were just like, everything is established, we're going to go kill conflict wolves.
Almost. There's still red tape. There's still,
Yeah,
you know, no matter...
it's never that easy.
It's never that easy, you know, even if it's a county.
Tell like, what is the red tape? Like, what did you have to deal with?
So it wasn't bad. There was folks in Fish and Game that were great. And Fish and Game basically in Idaho said Wildlife Services is the authority on an investigation. What they say goes. In Oregon, it's what Fish and Game says. Wildlife Services can and probably does investigation, but the ultimate decision comes down to Fish and Game. In Idaho, it was the boots on the ground. It was the guys like me that went in and said, okay, here's a kill. And we went through a complete investigation.
Yeah.
And it was a crime scene. It was treated as a crime scene. And so we would go in there and we would get the call and we would get there as fast as we could. I would go in there and got to know the ranchers real fast and the sheepmen real fast. A bunch of them I already knew. And
Yeah, I was going to say, like, your background.
yeah, there's a bunch of them I already knew or knew of them, and they knew of me.
Dude, and I think the whole wolf thing, particularly as it applies to Colorado, that dynamic, I shouldn't say particularly, just in my world's Colorado, that dynamic is way underestimated. Like the dynamic of dealing with these ranchers and understanding what their day-to-day problems actually are like.
And understanding the dynamics of wolves and cattle.
Yeah.
I mean, even the rancher does not really understand what is happening to their cattle with wolves.
Yeah.
It's such a new, it's never happened before. I mean, maybe in Canada, maybe on the border, but never in cow country like what we have. We've never had the dynamics of wolves in domesticated cattle. The closest we've had is wolves in buffalo.
Yeah.
Back in the centuries past, but those were a different wolf than what we had, what was brought into here. And so I got a real fast education on what this wolf can do.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Yeah. But I want you to reiterate what you just said, though, man. I've heard you say it before, like yesterday. The whole idea, we're reintroducing these wolves, but we're reintroducing them into a world that is completely new historically.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was no domestic livestock in any history of wolves just showing up to a new spot, there being domestic livestock.
Never.
I mean, you mentioned buffalo, but the thing about, you're talking about an era when buffalo could get chased by wolves and they could just run 10 miles to a new spot.
Or move 100 miles, to whatever.
Yeah.
And they were a different wolf.
Yeah.
They were the plains wolf as compared to what's going on now. I mean, at the start of, before the white migration from Europe into North America, there was 23. They've established that there's 23 subspecies of wolves, from Maine to Florida, all the way through the Ohio Valley, all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of different types of wolves.
Oh, yeah.
You know, from Mexico, to Canada, and so there was 23 different ones, and as that settlement expanded, you know, they were killed, they were wiped out. They were a predator that they wanted to get rid of, and so now that we've, I'm going to get dates wrong, but I think in Wyoming the last wolf was taken probably in the 30s, maybe early 40s. The last wolf in Oregon was taken down in that southwest corner in that Klamath Marsh country. She was a 12-year-old female, and it took them 12 years to kill her, to catch her. And at that point, in today's valuation, she had killed, I believe, almost $300,000 worth of livestock.
Yeah.
And that was just a single wolf. And so Idaho had probably, it rivaled Colorado, other states for elk and moose. I mean, they had a tremendous number of elk and moose. They don't anymore.
Yeah.
And so you take what they brought in, and like I said, experimental, non-essential species population. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, when they brought them in, there was already wolves here. There was already that subspecies wolves here, and it was not as an aggressive wolf. It's not as big as a wolf, and those wolves were gone. When they brought those wolves in, they told everybody that these wolves will only populate 6 to 8%, and that's easy to control. They were wrong. These wolves, with the right groceries, with the right amount of feed, like elk and moose, which was in Yellowstone, all over Montana, Idaho, everywhere, those wolves, those populations grew at 35 to 45% a year. We
were talking about this. So, in what part of this is the fallacy of like the alpha male and female, correct? Explain that.
There's this fallacy that only the alpha male and female will breed. They've done studies in Alaska, which is what this wolf is. It's that Canadian northern wolf, and they've gone in and collared every female in a big pack, and just to monitor who's getting bred, what's the dynamics of this pack. And I believe there was 8 wolves that were collared. I believe 6 of those wolves were bred. The alpha male killed 1 batch of pups. The alpha female adopted a whole nother batch of pups. They allowed 1 set of pups to be close. They moved another set of pups out. And so if you have, let's just say 1 batch was killed, so you've got 5 females that are having pups, and they're going to have 4 to 6. So let's just say 5. There's 25 pups just bang like that. They're added to the mix. You do that every year. If you look at the maps of how the packs grew in Idaho from 95 on, it's like this tumor that starts here, and it just starts spiraling out into this just mass of wolves, and pretty soon, other than the south end of Idaho, it's covered.
They've dispersed quickly.
Quickly.
So let's get into that, man. You show up to the scene in this new position. What did the conflict stuff look like?
Some of it in the spring, when those cattle would go into the high country meadows, elevations of 4,500 feet on up. If it was an easy spring, easy winter, they would get there earlier, first part of May, mid-May, and calves would be getting killed. And that's pretty easy to identify. Usually you would have wolf tracks, you would have the calf consumed most of it. You would have blood on the cow where she was sniffing or fighting. In the spring, it's usually wet. There may be some snow. So you're getting a lot of evidence that says, this is wolves. When the elk calves start hitting the ground in June, when the fawns start hitting the ground in June, the consumption of a kill would basically stop, but the killing would just amp up. And then I'm talking about my area. There's areas of Idaho where ranchers would turn out into the high country and they would have killing on their calves all summer long.
I got you.
You know,
sure.
But mainly what I dealt with was what is known as Long Valley. There's about probably 30 miles of just meadows in ranches. And from June until middle of October till the cattle went home, I would have subadult wolves, which is a 1 to 3 year old wolves, would come in, would drop into the valley, and they would run cattle. They would run them and kill them. They would single one out or single two out. Different wolves had different MOs. Some would go to the head, some would go to the back end, some would go to the tail. I've had cows that would have most of their tail gone and not really a single bite on them, but you'd have a dead cow there. And they would just do that over and over for such a long time with such intensity that that cow would reach exertional myopathy and she'd just die. You know,
And they're consuming the cattle, or no?
No, they are not there to eat whatsoever. There is so many groceries out in the trees, which they like an elk calf way better than any cow, any calf, any bovine that is out there. Whether it's fawn.
So are they killing the cows for fun, or what's the?
It's not fun. I think it's the exact same thing as I used to think it was fun, and we used to call it kind of.
Yeah, you hear sport killing.
Sport killing.
You'll
yeah,
hear the.
right.
I remember seeing, you'd see like some article that they found 12 dead elk in a meadow or something.
Yeah,
You said they call it sport killing.
Yeah, and I mean I've seen big lions go into a band of sheep and kill, and they kill because they enjoy it. Never eaten any. I've seen where bear have just chased a bunch around because they like it. But this is more, I think, of it's more of training for a sub. It's more, I'm sure they enjoy it.
So it's a certain like age of wolves that are doing
1 to 3.
I got you.
Yeah, the vast, I'm going to say 90% or 95% of the wolves that I took on the ground, trapping, snaring, calling, thermal, in Long Valley were subadult wolves. And if they weren't subs, they were old wolves that were hanging on the fringes and trying to grab a calf here and there.
I got you.
And so I attribute to the exact same thing as somebody shooting free throws. It's practice.
So they're
to get good at it, they're training themselves. Where do we bite? How do we chase? That whole aspect of do we do it in pairs? How does it work as a single? How does it work in 5 or 6? And so usually it seemed like it was in 2s or 3s. I got into some that was 5s and 6s, but it's those teenagers that have been bumped away from that den site. Once that den site happens with the alpha male and female, they run the subs off. The subs just leave. Now it's go time, play time, and they run
into domestic cattle, and they're like, "Oh, this is good.
Here we go."
Yeah. Sure.
It's play time. It's like a 6-year-old at the county fair. We're here to have fun.
Yeah.
And so, and what people don't understand, they've got this misconcept of, well, they wouldn't do that and not eat it.
Yeah.
Well, why not? They love to chase.
I think, I think it's because we take like our cultural norms and we think that somehow that's going to apply to a wolf.
And it doesn't.
Give a shit.
The wolf is off the charts on what we think it should do.
Yeah. And if you think about evolutionary, like your theory of like they need to practice.
Absolutely.
They do need to practice.
And the best thing to practice on is a 1,000-pound yearling that can't really run. He's not made to run.
Sure.
He's got no breath. He's big and fat and he can't kick real well.
Yeah.
He's got no horns. And so let's practice on him and let's go kill a bull elk, in the winter,
sure.
Or a bull moose or a cow moose, for heaven's sakes. A cow moose can can kick the lights out of you from 100 yards away.
Beat on you.
Right.
So I got 2 questions there along those lines. One, how when you showed up, what do you think? Were 10 cows getting killed a year in Idaho, or was it 200? So that's my first question. The second question is, do you think that the fact that these wolves early on have access to early on in their lifespan, they have access to domestic livestock, which every wolf in Colorado will, because every valley is developed in Colorado, 100% of them.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have access to domestic livestock right early on. Do you think that makes them more prone to killing livestock later on? Like, do they learn? Have you ever thought
I think, oh yeah. To give you an idea, what happened is when in '95, when wolves were dumped in the Frank Church in the wilderness, they were dumped in the church, and they said they will never come out of here. And if they do, yeah, we'll come and get them.
Yeah.
And it had to do with the Nez Perce, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. 6 months after the wolves were dumped in, a subadult wolf comes out of there, collared wolf comes out of there, comes to Cascade, kills on Phil Davis's ranch, and leaves. And everybody was just, oh my gosh,
Like, holy shit!
how did he travel that far?
Yeah.
And so that wolf was probably accustomed to cattle in Canada. Where they got them, but we've had wolves. I think a wolf can come out of the church, travel 150 air miles, drop into a valley with cattle, and they can literally.
Yeah, they're not idiots.
No, they're not idiots. They can smell that and go, just, you know what? This is easy peasy. You know, this is going to be a lot of fun.
All right, guys, in some of my content, you're gonna see that I've been using this chest holster from Invader Concepts. This is with my 10mm. I also use it with my Glock 19 and even a PMR 30. I'm gonna do a bunch of content here in the next couple months on that around bear defense. It should be interesting. It looks a little awkward to have your gun under your bino harness, but if you test out all the different variations, it is the best, and you have it on you all the time. I do have a discount code. It's CliffG, and it's for 10% off. Go check them out. So so the concept of like these are livestock killing wolves and these aren't. I'm like, there's some truth, but the reality is like any wolf.
They're all killers.
Yeah,
they're all killers.
Yeah.
It's just the ones who get caught at it.
Sure.
You know, they're not. They'll jump at any opportunity to kill, to further their ability to do that. I do not believe that a wolf that will kill elk and moose will look at a cow at a certain time that year or the opportunity and just go, no, I just don't like killing cattle.
Yeah.
You know, they all do. You know,
yeah. Which is interesting, man. Because I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, because I know you're familiar with other species too. But dude, I feel like lions and bears, they kind of do. I mean, lions avoid most livestock. Am I wrong?
Depends on the lion. As a rule, yes. But there's lions that love sheep. When you get sheep that go into the high country, they know that. I mean, and then they'll wait all year for springtime to come for those sheep to get up there, and they'll follow them clear across a range. You know,
once they get where they figure it out. Yeah.
And you know, a bear will get accustomed to those sheep. You know, and so, but. I've put collars on wolves, on subadult wolves in Long Valley, and we had to do that to prove that these wolves were killing, and then that allowed us to follow those wolves in the winter to their winter grounds, because I told Fish and Game, I says, the only way we can get ahead of this 8-ball is we got to go to the winter grounds where the wolves are congregated around the elk, because in the summer you just can't.
Yeah,
it's just like
in terms of effectiveness of killing.
You just can't. You might stop that one on this ranch, but as a whole, on 5 counties, I'm getting wiped out.
Okay,
you know, I don't have a chance.
So you would identify the wolves killing cattle, and you wouldn't necessarily kill them in the low country when they were doing that.
If I could.
Yeah.
But the chances. I mean, here's the thing about subadults: the 2 collars we put on, the male was going back to the church, which was 80 air miles, 50 air miles, and then he would go deep into it. He would go to the middle fork, which is right in the center of that.
Yeah.
And then he would loop back in about 2 weeks, pick up the female out there by Warm Lake and drop down, and they would drop at the top end, say in Donley, and they would move through those cows, and either in one night, but 2 at the most, they'd be done. And they'd go back to the trees. And so by the time I'm dealing with the kill on the first day up here.
Doing the investigation.
Trying to figure it out. And by the time then maybe that evening I get some calls, or the next day I get some calls. So by the time I get to the south, they're already gone. You know, they're 30 miles away from me. And I just can't. I mean, we're talking forest, we're talking canyon, we're talking some of the roughest stuff in the 48.
If you got some collared, you know when they're hitting live.
Yes, and so that's what I was able to prove. By the time this would happen, I would pull up those collars and I would see the pinks and I would see the lines, and says, okay, it's these 2. And so I documented that all through the summer. I didn't want to kill those wolves because then we would lose our data. I wanted them to be the Judas wolf, so that when we get to winter, when those wolves pack back up with the main pack and go back in there. And just because we had 2 collared wolves showing to come through, that doesn't mean there wasn't 4 others or 6 others with them.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And so
you only have that.
Yeah, and so we were able to go back in the winter and we took a decent number of wolves off those collars. Yeah. And it made a difference.
So when you started, I mean, how many, I mean, I know you probably don't know the exact number, but how many livestock depredations were there?
I remember with me and a couple temporary guys and the other trapper. And so I'm going to say in that Long Valley, which is where we had a really big problem, was tied into some of those other counties. But there was, I think, 128 kills in a summer.
And do you think that's that's like an underestimate?
No, I think that's a good estimate of where we were. I mean, there's guys that may not be in that higher country. May not be getting to their cattle all the time, and it's the logistics of doing that is incredible to try and do that.
Yeah, sure.
Where we were getting our kills is on these irrigated pastures, these high pastures, to where there's guys checking their cattle every morning.
Yeah.
You know,
so they know if
they know. Yeah. The guys that are higher up, they would come home and be missing 40 calves, 50 calves, 30 cows. I mean, historically, they never ever had those losses. Once you turn calves out into the high country, those calves are healthy. They're a lot older. The cows are good. You never turn an old sick cow out. You keep her at home on the pastures, and you send your good stuff, the healthy stuff, the stuff that can handle the mountain on top. But when all of a sudden you got stuff coming home and you got wolves everywhere, it doesn't take a scientist or
the guys have like pretty good data. They got really good knowledge of what's going on.
And not only that, they're missing all these numbers, but their calves are coming home 100 pounds light.
Yeah, sure.
The cows are coming home, instead of a 98%, a conception rate on their cows, they've got an 80% or a 70% or a 50% conception rate.
Yeah.
You can't stay in business doing that. You just can't.
Sure.
I know ranchers that have given up their forced permits just because we can't afford to run cows.
It wasn't worth the hassle.
Right.
And it's I guess the other part of it, and we could go like down a totally different path on it, is that even if they still are able to, they're economically viable and all of that, it's just an inconvenience for them. It's still unfair as a society to, because you're taking something that people are voting for or pushing for, but all the problems you're pushing it on like very small population. If you have to deal with all the bullshit,
and that's the ranching community, the livestock community has dealt with that for so many years. Whether it's Colorado and Denver is making policy, or if it's Oregon and you've got Portland, Salem making policy, or you've got Idaho to where Boise, Coeur d'Alene are making policy, and these ranchers, they don't have a say in that. Yeah. And you take a century plus of them trying to get rid of this predator, and now the government says, no, we're going to bring it back.
Yeah.
And it's an even worse predator than you had before.
Sure.
I mean, I knew guys, they're gone now, but I knew guys that were old when I was, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that grew up in Montana, that dealt with wolves.
And I'm sure their parents dealt with them big time.
At the door. Wolves at the door. That's not just as a flippant saying. It's a real thing. Yeah. But a lot of investigations, and the more I did, the more I started seeing things and putting puzzle pieces together, because there was guys that trapped that were really good trappers, but they didn't understand the livestock end of the thing. They weren't able to piece together what nobody really knew at the time on what the dynamics were on cattle. They would see a dead cows, and I talked to so many cowboys that say, hey, I had a dead cow there, but there was just something weird. There's just something off about that. And when somebody goes, I saw this cow and just kind of went, huh. When somebody says that, I can almost go, oh, it's probably a wolf. And I'm talking about a 6-year-old cow in her prime, 1,000-pound cow, and she is dead with her head downhill, her legs back like this, her hind legs back like this, her head bent underneath her like she was going 100 miles an hour, and you just flip the switch. You know,
Yeah.
I've shot enough cows in my life to where I know what that reaction is. They'll hit the ground, they'll roll over, and they'll shake for a bit, and they'll quiver and shake, and then they die.
Yeah.
These things are dead on their feet.
Yeah.
You know, and I just go,
And so what is it from?
it's exertional myopathy.
And the wolves are snagging them or just running them?
Both, all of
Yeah.
it, you know. And so I've had big circles in meadows. It's just beat down, and it's where 1 or 4 wolves, I don't know, but they just go around and around and around, and they will bite and let her go. They will bite
Yeah.
and let her go. And I've had wolves that would go to, you know, just the flank, you know, or underneath here, go to the tail. I've had wolves that figured out that with cows not having horns, but when a cow cannot run anymore, she's going to fight. And for her to fight, she's going to get down and she's going to put her head down.
Yeah.
And she might even drop down onto her front knees to protect that chest, that core. That's her life. And so when she does that, she exposes all of this, the whole neck and the top of her back. And I've seen wolf bites at the back of a shoulder blade or in the front of a shoulder
Okay,
blade.
so they just bite whatever they can get around the head.
Yeah. And they learn to where what really works.
Yeah.
And if you take a wolf bite, a good mature wolf, and that kill bite, I don't think a grown man, a physically fit grown man with a leaded baseball bat could ever hurt a cow more than a single bite does.
I gotcha.
You know,
Yeah,
I've seen
just
where
the pressure.
those wolves'
When you say
jaws.
the kill bite, do they bite the actual neck like a lion does?
No.
Okay.
I mean, they'll bite there. They will. They'll bite here. They'll bite all over. But that kill bite, and I say a kill bite, they can literally put a cow down by a single bite right here. She just can't move anymore.
Just all the weight on her. Yeah.
It's not the weight. It's that massive
Pressure, okay.
compression, and there's the hemorrhage that is underneath the hide is incredible.
So you skin these cows and you can just see all the bruising.
It tells you a story. It's like a
Yeah.
painting, you know. I had one that was really interesting. Phil Davis. I mean, he has multiple kills every year, and he calls me up, and it was a Friday evening. He says, "Hey, we got this calf," and he says it's one of my biggest wiener calves. He's 600 plus, and he says he can't breathe, and his tail's missing.
Yeah.
And that tail missing really, I said, well, that's wolf, you know.
Yeah.
But he says there's not a mark anywhere else. I said, yeah, but that tail missing, that's bad. So
Just snag it and rip it.
So this is how this all played out. I said I'll be there first thing in the morning. So I get up there Saturday morning, right at daylight. They put him in the barn. Calf's dead, and so he's laying there. So I skin out the full left side from hock clear to his ear, and there ain't a mark on him.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're going, wow, you can hang him up. He looks like he's on a butcher hook.
Yeah, sure.
You could eat him. So we roll him over. I start at the ear, and as I get to the shoulder, the whole top of the shoulder is that clear edema, that jelly edema
Okay.
from shock,
Yeah.
from something. But it wasn't bloodied. It wasn't hemorrhage, which is normal on a wolf bite. And I went, wow, look at that. It almost looks like he got hit by a car. But there wasn't a mark on him. So I skinned all the way to his flank, and I happened to just move that front shoulder like up to here, and there was a line of hemorrhage right here. And I said, what's that? And so I just flayed that whole shoulder blade off, and once I got underneath there, it was a massive amount of hemorrhage. And what I deducted from what happened is a single wolf was chasing this big calf, got out of the hole of the tail, and he jerked and he spun that calf. And when he spun that calf come around like this, and he took one single bite,
Armpit bite. Yeah.
right up underneath there, and crushed it.
Yeah.
Just absolutely crushed that
Punctured
chest.
a lung or something.
It crushed his heart.
And
So that, we've all shot that lung shot, or that heart shot. That fills that cavity up, and that him having trouble breathing was
all the fluid in
all that fluid in there. And so the on a single bite, that muscle tissue between those ribs was almost. It wasn't even jellied. It was destroyed. I could push my fingers through it. So I cut 2 ribs out and looked in that cavity, and you could have taken 2 gallons of blood.
Yeah, so just
fluid, and so it just fluid. So that's what a single bite can do.
Yeah.
And so imagine a cow that's got 50 bites. You know,
Yeah.
they just can't take it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the bites themselves, other than like with that calf, but on a full-grown cow, yearling, or a bull, those bites aren't mortal. They're not fatal.
Yeah.
It's that running exertional myopathy. It's that
They run them.
that exertion.
Yeah.
The muscles are worked. It uses up the oxygen, which creates lactic acids. And at that level, with exertional myopathy, if you reach that peak
Yeah.
and past that, you're going to die.
Yeah.
There's three stages of it. There's the acute death syndrome, there's the medium one, and the late stage one. The late stage one can take up to 30 days to kill.
Yeah.
The acute one can take minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and so marathon runners, you know, get exertional myopathy. Racehorses, you know, dogs that run. Fish. If you fight a fish too long and you turn him loose, you think he's going to make it, but he goes off and he dies.
Yeah.
You know, birds can get it. So
it's a you know, I remember, and I could have some of my facts wrong, so correct me, Greg, but the thing that I always think about, because it's super prevalent on YouTube, Instagram, is a guy finds an elk in a fence, and the elk's been in that fence for, you could tell, for hours, and the guy goes over there. You know the elk's been in the fence a long time because it's docile.
Yep.
And they release the elk and everybody's excited. And I'm not saying, you know, the people are trying to do something great.
Right.
But the reality is those animals die.
They die.
Almost always.
Idaho Fish and Game has a set rule that in chase, if they were going to say net gun, say bighorns or deer or whatever, moose, whatever, they have a set rule that chase will not proceed past 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because of exertional myopathy.
Yeah.
And they say that, like with elk, when they net gun elk, in that herd, any death that occurs within 2 weeks after that capture exercise operation, they attribute it to exertional myopathy.
Yeah.
And they call it capture myopathy, but same thing.
Yeah.
You know, same thing.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, and I think people don't realize it. And I remember it vaguely as a young kid, and I'll always remember it because we used to get them in our fence on the ranch that I grew up on, and the game warden, my dad would call the game warden because it was right on a highway, you know, or whatever, if there was an issue, or somebody on the road would. And that's what the game warden said. They're like, you know, these are basically roadkill.
Yes.
Like they should just be shot. And if
it'd be easier on the animal.
Them,
Yeah.
Because people get them out of the fence and wrestle with them, and they trot off and they stand in the tree line and they die.
Yeah.
And, you know.
And so if you take exertional myopathy, excluding the dead ones that have happened, what happens to your herd on the number of cows that have been pushed almost to that?
Yeah.
Is there liver damage, heart damage, lung damage, you know, to the organs? My guess is absolutely. There's different levels of that. And so you have a cow that you think is in her prime, she's 6 to 8, she's going to produce calves for you for the next maybe 10 years if you got easy country.
Yeah.
You know, but in reality, your herd is being destroyed and you don't even know it.
Right.
You know, those cattle are harder to manage. You can't work them. You have to get rid of your dogs. You know, the OX Ranch did a big study with wolves in their cattle, and they never fed hay. They had a winter outfit in the lower country. Once wolves showed up and got into them, those cows were so poor that they had to feed hay for 3 months to get their body score back up for calving season for them to make it through calving. So the dynamics of wolves in cattle, it just goes forever. And the theory or the deal of, well, they only kill the sick and the weak and they clean up the herd. I've done hundreds and hundreds of investigations, and I only had one animal that was sick, and it was a fighting bull. It was a little fighting bull, and I think even though he was sick, he was so feisty. The wolf says, "Yeah, hey, let's go." You know, and
probably brought it to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah,
right,
yeah. He was snorting even though he was sick. You know.
Yeah.
And that's the only one I've had.
Guys, biltong. Okay, I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Biltong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Pair that to your gas station jerky, a great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my code CliffGray, CLIFFGRAY at checkout for 10% off and to support this content. Thanks, guys.
And it's almost like some of them, it seems to me like the better the cattle, the more the wolves want to run.
The
them.
wolves like that.
You know, a wolf can stick his nose to the ground and track a 2-year-old caribou through a herd of 1,000 and find that yearling or that 2-year-old and kill it. You know, a grizzly can do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think a wolf can smell a 2-year-old or a really good fit cow as compared to one that's like, she's kind of struggling, you know?
Yeah.
I think they put off a different scent, a different smell, and that wolf's going to key off of that.
Yeah.
You know,
but even regardless of that, like, you don't think they really give a shit if it's hurt, wounded, or whatever. They're just finding something. They
don't chase wounded.
They're not focused.
They want the chase.
Yeah. Okay.
They want the chase. It does them no good to chase something that can't run.
Yeah.
They'll bypass that, and then you get that snorty one that goes brr, and off she goes.
So they just like running.
Oh yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
That's where their training is. They don't need the training on something sick.
Yeah.
They need to train that one that it feels good to a wolf to run.
Yeah.
They can run for miles.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I've never heard that theory, but it totally makes sense, man.
I just saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought about it when I first started, but I got to thinking, it's like that calf in that single bite.
Yeah.
That was this man's best calf.
Yeah.
Out of 1,000.
Yeah.
You know? Why did they pick that one?
Sure.
Why not go pick the one that was like, at the end of the herd? No, they picked the one, they picked the best. Because I think he smelled good and he was feisty, you know? So
it is funny because, I mean, and this is total speculation. I have no idea, man. But you can have like a mouse sitting in your front yard that's like, you've probably, you've got mouse poison around your house or whatever. So you got like this mouse that's obviously got issues in your yard or whatever. Cat's not touching them.
Nah.
Like a mouse runs across the shop floor. Like the cat's like gonna destroy the whole.
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's like they want the action.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's something to that. For sure.
So, if people have time, if you really want to see what a single wolf can do, get on YouTube and look at Northern Ontario moose versus wolf.
Okay.
And a guy had this drone on this lake, and I'm sure he was out there just filming the fall colors. It was a gorgeous lake, and he comes around this spit of trees, and there's this cow moose standing out there, probably three foot of water, and it's all muddied up around her, and something was going on there. She's got her ears laid down, she is mad, and she is staring at the bank and the brush, and she's got her head down and she's just waiting. And this wolf just comes, he launches through the brush like Superman, hits the water, and just comes charging at her. And it's a tremendous show of the ability of a wolf.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that one could kill a whole moose.
And the only reason that wolf did not is because the drone got too close.
Oh, okay.
He had her. He really did.
Of killing her.
Yeah. So, amazing stuff.
You said something there that I think is interesting because there's a couple different ways people construe it. There seems to be a concentration of the impact even within the ag world. Like there's specific ranchers that have to deal with more shit than other ranchers. And I think a lot of people construe it, and to be honest, this is how I've thought about it, is there's some guys that are good kind of PR guys when it comes to making sure they get paid for the damage, making sure people know that they hate wolves, and there's just guys that are more vocal about it. I've thought about it a lot that way, but some of the conversations that we've had, I think that's probably not the case. It's literally, for some reason, some ranchers get the majority of the problems.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
I think it has mainly to do with the topography of the land.
They can be more effective there, or
they can get there easier. They can get out of there with less threat, less risk. If you look at the routes of wolves out of the church, it's the same route that the elk take. Yeah. It's the easiest route into the backcountry, and it's the easiest route back to the winter grounds, you know? And so those wolves run those, and guess what? Phil Davis's ranch sits right on the tip of that.
Yeah, so he's just naturally...
He is naturally, and I've seen that with coyotes. I mean, I've had ranches that just get destroyed, or the possibility of just being eaten alive by wolves at calving time. And you'll have, ranches that are 4 or 5 ranches down the road never get hit.
Yeah.
Simply because it's either too open or it's too rocky, or there's something there that it's just easier for wolves or for coyotes to work this ranch. And so, case in point, Phil Davis's ranch. Why did that wolf, 6 months after it got dropped in from Canada, line out and come to Phil Davis's and go back? And guess what? He had the second, I believe, the second wolf kill in the state of Idaho.
Yeah.
The other guy was a lot closer, but.
So there's some guys just have prolonged issues with them. And I guess the domestic part is the big issue, right? Because if it was game in that susceptible spot, they just move.
Well, let's take the Lolo zone. Before wolves were introduced into Idaho, the Lolo zone is from Grangeville all the way to the Montana line, to the Lolo Pass. The Clearwater drainages of the Clearwater River, Salmon River country, but mainly that Clearwater, that's the Lolo zone. Before wolves, there were 16 to 18,000 head of elk that lived there, over 1,000 moose. Wolves come in 95, and in 2014, Idaho Fish and Game asked us to go in and take as many wolves as we could. And at that time, there was 1,200 elk left, and I believe 80 moose.
Yeah.
And
so they decimated them.
Them. When we went in the second time, there was 800 elk, and they weren't sure how many moose.
Yeah.
I flew in there with a gentleman that was a very, very good helicopter pilot, is a very good helicopter pilot. He's been flying that since he was a teenager with his dad, and he knows that backcountry better than anybody. And I got the honor to fly with him, to gun for him on an operation in there. And there's a place back in there on the North Fork of the Clearwater called the Sugarloaf. Sugarloaf is a bare Sugarloaf Ridge. It runs for 5 miles or so. And it's got all that browse on it that moose love.
Yeah, sure.
And he said, and we were coming up there, and I knew of the Sugarloaf, but we were coming up there, and he said, when I was young and I would fly fishing game, he said there'd be so many moose on the Sugarloaf. We would have to go to the top end, back and forth to separate, and we'd count those. And we'd section them off and count this one and count this section because there were so many. And he says we always counted over 800 moose on the Sugarloaf. Yeah. When we flew in there with him, we had a 3-day-old snow, 2 feet deep, tremendous tracking conditions. We got in there, and he says, "Tell me if you see something." And we flew up one side, come around, flew down the backside. Not a single track. They were just gone. They weren't decimated. They were just, gone. Yeah. And so that's what wolves can do to a population. They don't have the chance to move. They just don't. They can't move far enough away to get away from them.
Now, that area, once you get this, they go through it and they knock down all the game population, I'm assuming that some of those wolves go off for better hunting.
They're the ones that move. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
They go off.
Yes.
And then maybe they go where there's domestic livestock, maybe more game, whatever they do. But in my mind, I'm just thinking this out, Greg. My mind, one of the fundamental problems with the domestic livestock situation, it's even more prevalent. My speculation, it'll be worse in Colorado. I'm fairly familiar with the Selway and the Church. It has its own valleys. People in Colorado don't Colorado's different. Your wilderness areas, they're high altitude to low altitude. There are very few places where you have a wintering valley anywhere in Colorado.
Really?
They're all developed. Yeah. You fly into the Frank Church, you go, you're coming out of Montana, you go up over a ridge and then you go back down. A lot of times you're landing at the same elevation that, but you're 15 miles into the wilderness. There aren't wilderness areas like that in Colorado.
Interesting.
It's all high alpine that dumps down into either human development or ag. You know what I mean? And so I wonder what's going to happen, and maybe it's already, there's only I don't know the exact number, 30 wolves in Colorado, 40 wolves in Colorado, and they're all conflict wolves.
Yes.
Already.
Yes.
Within,
Oregon's still smiling.
Yeah, I'm kidding. We'll get into that. But I'm it's part of that that they're going to immediately be on the domestic livestock.
Yes.
And one of the issues that, like, with this dynamic I find is that, so you've got, what's his name, Phil Davis?
Yeah.
He's got a ranch, and he's clearly having to deal with this shit, you know, for a prolonged period of time, but he's not going to stop raising the density of cattle that he's raising on his ranch. You know, I wouldn't suspect that he would. He's got
the operation will stay the same as long as it's viable.
So he's basically replenishing this feed opportunity to wolves that know that's a susceptible spot. So this is like, I don't see how you can get any compatibility.
You can't. It doesn't work.
But like, why did we not think about that before?
No, they all said, you know, you can use, you know, non-lethal. You know, you can use flaggery, noise. You know, we can haze. It doesn't work.
It just doesn't.
The only thing, and I'm going to repeat this, the only thing that will deter a wolf is force, is killing them.
Yeah.
And you can go back through history as far as you want that they kept records, whether it's Siberia, Russia, Asia, Europe, you know, the start of America. The only thing that would deter a wolf is killing it. You know, and there's really no other answer. And so this thing was brought in, and just to me, it's the worst game management decision since wiping out the buffalo. You know, it's just the dynamics of what is coming. And I don't know what's going to happen in Colorado. Every state, every section of a state is different. I learned that with coyotes, and I'm learning that with wolves. And I wondered what's going to happen in the country that I grew up in the high desert, where you've got you know, sage ground, you got high desert ground that goes, you know, up to 6,500, 7,000 feet, down to 3,000 per se, and it's wide open. There's juniper, you know, but basically it's open desert. And I'm thinking,
but they're coming.
They're coming. Well, they're here. They're here now. They're into Juntura, where I grew up, and it's that high desert country. And I thought, well, will you just have a few wolves? Will they just kill one or two? And kind of finding out that it's could very possibly be way worse than the forest, because it's so open. Instead of wolves running one or two or three, they're running 200, 300 at a whack. And
instead of carving out one animal, they just run whole herds.
The whole herds. They're finding out that they can run whole herds because they can see them, and the cattle can see the wolves. There's nothing. I don't think there's nothing in the animal kingdom other than maybe a hyena that puts the fear into an animal like a wolf. I've seen evidence of cows, horses just absolutely losing their minds in the presence of wolves. You know, and so with Colorado, those wolves are going to adjust to whatever they have to propagate, to survive and gain ground. They may kill on those cows in that high country, but when those cattle go down, way down, my guess is Colorado is going to be like Oregon. We're not going to kill wolves. You know, in a management position like Montana, Wyoming, or in Idaho isn't even killing wolves the way they need to be. But my guess is Colorado, it's going to be a long time before that happens. And when it does happen, your wildlife's going to be gone. Val Geist, I encourage everybody to read everything they can on of what Val Geist had to say about wolves and livestock, or excuse me, wildlife. He talked about wildlife deserts to where there's absolutely nothing left because of wolves, and that's happened in Canada. That's happened in caribou herds. It's an actual event that will occur. I think the Lolo is there now, probably. You know, if not very soon. I mean, how do you go from 16,000 head of elk to almost zero? You know.
So you think and I've heard this theory a couple times. I've heard the theory. Some people speculate that the wolves may not do that well in Colorado because of it being a little bit of a less wild place, more development in the valleys. But your opinion is they're going to figure it out.
Until you start killing wolves, they'll be right on the doorstep. It doesn't matter. Wolves will kill in town if they have to until they start getting killed.
And I think that's the dynamic that I wonder in Colorado. That are they actually going to do like almost the inverse that they've done in some of these other states? Are they just going to be immediately domestic livestock?
It won't be immediate, but it'll come.
Yeah.
You know, I watched the wolves in Oregon before they started killing a few. I mean, in that Wallowa country, I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe it was well over 300 head of livestock were killed by wolves before Fish and Game finally gave the go-ahead to take that pack out, you know? And so if there's 300 that were confirmed,
who knows? Yeah.
is there 800 or 1,000 that, you know, that weren't? And so that whole county, that whole valley was so affected by it. And there was a pair of wolves that come off of the Eagle Caps into Keating Valley, and were coming right into the backyard of the barn, into the back corral of the barn, and killing, you know, in the middle of the night, and going back. And in Idaho, they would see wolves all the time in daylight, out in the open, in meadows, close to ranch buildings, close to the home places and stuff. And when Idaho had their very first hunting season, those wolves had never been shot at. And they took, I believe, 400 and some wolves on that first very short wolf season. And Idaho said, wow, we've got this covered. You know, this is a great management tool, and we can control this. The next year they had wolf season, and only half those numbers were taken. And then only half those numbers were taken. And now wolves are trapped, they're flown for, their thermal is allowed. To catch a wolf in Idaho, good luck.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, really
And
tough.
it's not because of a population decline. It's just because
they've gotten smarter.
Yeah.
It's their ability to adjust to that knowledge, to learn from that.
Yeah.
I could catch a wolf with one, say whatever I used, one lures or whatever type of set. And if the pack was with him or whatever, you're done using that. You only got one, you know?
Let's talk about that for 15 minutes. We'll kind of finish off with that, actually hunting them.
Mm-hmm.
So did you shoot them all out of a helicopter?
No,
or
no.
like what was? Give the rundown of like what the approach was.
Sure.
And maybe even insights, Greg, because you probably have some. It's funny, man, because wolf hunting, there is becoming more interest in it.
Sure.
You know, from a sport hunter's perspective, or whatever you want to call it. And I personally believe that in the States, it is the hardest animal to kill.
It is the hardest animal.
And so,
I don't care where you go.
Oh, okay.
You know, you can go as far up into Alaska, you can go to Siberia, Mongolia, wherever. They are the hardest animal to kill.
And a lot of the guys that have killed them, I think the reality is that it was opportunistic.
Yes.
The guys that I know that really focus on them, and you talk to them, you're like, oh, that's like, you know, one of my buddies who's into them, I'll be like, oh, I'd love it. Let's set up a hunt and go kill one. And they're like, you got 25 days.
Yeah.
You got 30 days.
Yeah. Are you in shape?
Get it done.
You know, I mean, like really good shape.
Guys, I've been using onX Maps for almost 2 decades now, hunting, guiding, outfitting. It is the gold standard tool when it comes to mapping software in the hunting world. They've been a huge supporter of my content for multiple years. So if you want to support me and you want to support them, use my code CliffG for 20% off at onxmaps.com. It is an awesome tool that I use all the time when I'm preparing for hunts, and I use it almost every single day in the field. For navigation, knowing unit boundaries, knowing private land boundaries, it is the tool you have to have.
So I want to hear like how you guys shot, you know, from the exciting stuff, blasting them out of helicopters, to some of the, I guess, maybe more applicable to somebody who might want to hunt them. You know?
I will take more than 15 minutes, but we'll do a quick rundown. So
another one.
I took, out of those numbers that I took 30 to 33% on the ground, where there was trapping with snares, some calling, some stalking, some thermal at night. I would set up at night. I would just run and gun for 5-6 days a week, from 1st of June until probably elk season, while everything was in the trees. And I would set up where I was having problems. I would try and set up to where I would try and get as close as I could to those wolves at night. And I had 2 dogs with me. I let my dogs run around, do their thing at dark. Right at dark, I would set up my teepee to where if the wolves come in, and they did, they would come in, and a wolf, a big male that howls at 2 a.m, 30 feet from your tent, will light you up.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, and so I could roll out of my bedroll, guns right there, just slip off the safety out, you know, thermal on, out the slot. I had a cooler right there I could lean on, and just, you know, type of a deal. And so I was very effective at night. Wolves that have been hunted like the dark. And so...
And you're using dogs as a
decoy.
As a domestic lure.
Yes, absolutely. That's probably one of the best ways, because wolves hate dogs.
Yeah,
they really do.
Sure.
And so, but I did a lot of trapping. When I first started, the wolves didn't know me. I was the new guy on the block. They didn't know my dogs. They didn't know me. And so that first summer on the job, I took 13 off of kills, you know, the depredations. And trapping for depredation is way different, like I said earlier, than just going out and trying to stack up numbers. You know, I would go in there and take that wolf or those 2 wolves that were coming in.
And there's value in being specific.
It's very specific. And, you know, and one, we can justify what we're doing because we're being very specific. We're being surgical on that. And, but it's a lot harder.
Oh, yeah.
And so the last year I was there, I took 2 that summer. And so in the helicopter, I learned this later, but in every wolf that I killed on the ground, those wolves that I had not killed were learning me. And I've seen wolves. I looked back down the trail, and it's through the trees, as far as you could see, barely see, there would be a wolf standing there looking at you. And he's figuring you out. He is smelling you, he is tracking you, and he is imprinting that into there, and so that he cannot get killed, so that he can adjust to what you're doing. And so from day one, every wolf that I dealt with, I'm educating others. It's like there's bulls here that certain people cannot call those bulls anymore, because those bulls know,
they know that guy's
It's the same with wolves.
And so probably more extreme. Like, do you think like you go set up camp somewhere, and a wolf that had interacted with you at some point in his lifespan, if he ran 500 yards from your camp and smelled your camp, do you think he's like, I know that guy?
Oh,
he
yeah.
ran out of the country.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've had wolves. I've had, you know, breeding, you know, pairs that had pups that were killing, and I would go in, and like this happened on the last year I was there. I would go in. There's the pup tracks, and they're moving. They're not in a den hole. They're camped out, and they're moving. I would ease in there, and I would do everything I could to not leave scent. I would set just 2 traps, blind sets in those trails, and I would come back, and I wanted to put a collar on. I'd come back and nothing in the traps, no new tracks.
Yeah.
And by that end of that day, I knew they had left. It would take me 2 weeks to find them. And when I found them, I'd ease in, off they go.
Yeah.
And so, there was a double whammy for me, that I was in the helicopter, and my pilot and I, we were the only helicopter, you know, in Idaho for the agency, and we're covering, we're flying for trappers and all over the state. And we would take DNA anytime that we could and needed to, or we got to where we were darting and collaring wolves.
Yeah.
So anytime that we would do that, man, all I'm doing is imprinting onto those wolves that are still alive that, hey, guess who I am?
Yeah.
It's that guy. It's
like,
that guy.
With this guy, it's...
Yeah, and I just educated so many wolves in so much country that in my country, we flew it pretty hard. Every wolf knew who I was, and it just got harder and harder. And
the helicopter too, they recognize it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a, you know,
I mean, the sound of it or whatever.
And honestly, a fixed wing can get 1,500 feet above a bunch of wolves. They don't even look at it. They don't care. But we flew at a 500 MD, a Hughes 500, and it's a short, stubby rotor blade, and it screams. It's a pissed off Hornet. You know, it's a Porsche, and I've been dropped off, and whether I howl or, you know, a lot of times I get dropped off on some high country and I'd howl and spend half an hour there. I would go off and sit down and be quiet. I could hear him 15 miles away. So how far can a wolf hear you? So if they're out in the open and they hear it 30 miles away, they're covered up by the time you get there. And a wolf, A wolf can hide like you can't believe. They are
if they
so
interact-
smart.
If they've interacted, if when they were a puppy, a helicopter ran the pack.
Oh yeah,
They know.
what that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a wolf can, like I said, a wolf, like in this deadfall here, a wolf can lay down right here and you can't see.
Yeah.
A gray wolf, a black one is kind of different, but
I've experienced that with wolves that I've glassed up.
Yeah,
In open country,
Yeah.
and they vanish.
they vanish.
What happened?
We had a collared wolf in what's called the Chili Slough. And the Chili Slough is this absolute tabletop grassland. And it's probably, I don't know, I'm going to say 4 miles by 5 miles. We had a collared wolf out there. Grass is about like this. And there was still some snow in some of the pockets. So I'm going to say into May, first part of June. Grass is good, but it's not, it's not high. Anything's going to stand out there. And it's a pool table, man.
Yeah.
And so we're flying along and we pick her up. We pick up that collar and it's pinging and it's just banging in your ears. And pretty soon it's kind of fading. And, and we're going, huh? Where'd she go?
How'd she outrun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden now we lost it. And I go, Joe, turn around. And so he'd spin around and bing. And it'd just get louder and louder. And pretty soon it'd get fainter and fainter. And it's like, huh, is there a hole? And on the third pass, I said, slow down, because we were running about 60 knots, and I said, slow down, So he slows down to about 30 knots. We're just easing along. And we're going along. And right when that ping is just banging away, I look over. And, dude, she's 30 yards from me.
But she's
There's this depression, and she is laid so flat. She's got her ears down, and she's eyeballing me. And I make eye contact with her, and she just wrinkles her lips and snarls at me. And I just go, Joe, keep going.
Yeah.
And so he does. I go, yeah. And I said, so I get my phone out, and I filmed it. And she wouldn't jump out of there. I mean,
she knew
the hole was only
it went bad when she running.
And we had to rotor wash her out.
Yeah.
We've done the same. We've done the same thing with a chunk of rabbit brush. And we know the collar's right there. And this was in a fixed wing.
Yeah.
We know the collar's right there. And we had to sit there and literally bump that sagebrush with the wheels of the plane to get that wolf to jump. He was wrapped around that chunk of brush and height.
So he knows.
Yeah, he knows. He knows.
So you're talking about wolves that they had an interaction where a guy jumped out of a helicopter, darted him, put a collar on him, whatever the deal is.
Or killed one and they come back and smelled all that. Yeah, it's
so they learn, and then they have that behavior. But the first time you ran them, they just got up and hauled ass.
Oh, some just stood there and looked at it.
Or just waited to get.
We in the Lolo, we got into a batch of them to where our bird dog guy in the fixed wing, he moved them 4 miles.
Yeah.
And up out of this hole, up out of this timber, around this steep hillside, and there's this great big snow field that goes out there. Excuse me. And he calls up, and we were stationed, ready to go. He calls up and he says, "Crank it." So we wind her up.
Yeah.
He says, "Get airborne." He says, "In a couple of minutes, I need you to haul ass here." And so, of course, the adrenaline's going. You're just popping with adrenaline.
Sure.
And there was 14 of them, all side hilling out there. And we just eased up to them and just one after the other.
Yeah.
And
but you only get one chance like that.
The only one, it will never happen again.
Yeah.
And the thing about with wolves when you're flying is you always stay below them. If you get above wolves, they know they're beat. They can't be.
Oh, okay.
They can get outrun now.
Yeah.
They can't outrun you. But if you start at the bottom and you get them going up, you can just one after the other, one after the other, until those last couple ones they're going, oh shit, we're in trouble. You know.
I envy you. I've hunted coyotes out of a helicopter a little bit in Texas. Coyotes that have been hunted out of helicopters, I assume. But the amount of I've shot pigs out of helicopters too. Mm-hmm. They just get running. Mm-hmm. It's like boringly easy.
Yeah.
Coyotes are like you're gonna get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like they stop and
round and around.
They're maneuvering around the helicopter.
Yeah.
So wolves figure that out. They start doing similar kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, especially darting, because darting, you got to get that helicopter, you got to get that wolf inside that rotor wash.
Yeah.
You got to get him right where you can almost grab him.
Yeah.
And then you just put, the dart's so slow, and so you just got, and so if you get a wolf that figures out that just outside of that wash he cuts, this way, that's that's we've had some of those that, man, they get squirrely. And there's some guys that I have flown cover for in a fixed wing tracking and bird dogging for them. And we had one that was she was really, really dark, but almost a chocolate, and had this great big brown patch on her. And they got a dart into her in the leg. They bone punched her.
Oh, okay.
But she wouldn't give it up, and she got away.
Yeah.
And so we found her again the next winter, and she got away.
Yeah.
And I was flying with another guy, and we jumped her and her male. And when I saw her, she was ringing her tail, and she was going like a rocket for the trees. And she got in a clump of trees, and we could see her. It was wintertime. We could see her, and she'd want to make a break for the rim. And once she got off the rim, she had it made.
Yeah, yeah.
And that pilot, he had to sit there, and we were just in a tight spiral, turning. And when she made that run, he just rolls it up almost upside down and just dives at her. And I shot her as she jumped off that rim.
She
ragdolled, but she was so cagey. She was so smart. Yeah. We just got lucky and caught her on a bare hillside.
Yeah.
And she knew it too, man. She was so wound up. She knew she was in trouble.
But it is interesting, man. This will be my last question. We'll wrap it up. But it might be the only species, man, that the more you hunt them, you said this to me a couple days ago. I guess the metaphor I would use or analogy, elk hunting, one of the things is you can actually be a pretty, I guess, like baseline, like low knowledge hunter. But if you're hunting the same country, you will learn how to you'll kill elk in that country really well because of the topography, everything else, where the elk go, you know it so well that you'll just become better at killing elk in that country. But if you take that guy, put him somewhere else, he'll have a hell of a time because he hasn't, learned a whole lot about the species and little nuances or whatever, but he's learned the country. I feel like wolves might be the opposite. You can build all your skill set in one spot,
and you're losing ground.
It's impossible.
You're
to kill
losing
them there.
ground every day.
Maybe go somewhere else, and you're like, I'm the man again.
For a little bit,
Yeah.
And then I don't know the exact numbers, but Federation for Wildlife is they reimburse folks for expenses that are hunting wolves. That's kind of the only vehicle right now in Idaho that's trying to knock the numbers down, save the elk, save the moose. But their statistics show that, let's just say you have 100 people that go wolf hunting, that buy a wolf tag. 99% of those people will be unsuccessful.
Yeah.
1% of those success rates are accidental.
Yeah.
Are usually your archery guys, or your elk hunter or deer hunters.
Luck.
Half of that 1% are the guys that go out there specifically to hunt wolves.
Sure.
So 0.5% are going out there specifically for that. 2% of that 0.5% are the guys that are successful in hunting wolves.
Yeah.
That's the success rate of hunting wolves.
It's hard.
It is the hardest animal in the world,
Yeah.
Got so much respect for them. In that aspect, I hate the brutality of what they do to wildlife. Sure. I think there is somebody's going to have to pay the fiddler someday, and it's coming. I think there's going to be. You can look back in history, and there's been a lot of people killed by wolves. I think we're headed there.
You think it'll eventually go that way?
Oh, yeah. Because it's happened too much in history.
Yeah.
If you look at World War I on the Eastern Front between Germany and Russia, there was wolves that were coming in at night during that one winter and getting in the trenches and just killing both sides. And so they called a truce.
Yeah.
And said, we need to stop the wolves. And so they killed, I believe, over 400 wolves in a month or a 2-week ceasefire. And once they got done, they went back to killing each other. But one of the best books out there to give you an idea is Wolves in Russia by Val Geis, and I can't remember the other guy, but there's Wolves in Russia, and then there's another one called The Real Wolf. Those two books will give you a real good idea, or the folks a real good idea of what actually is going on out there with wolves and people and livestock.
Or where it could go. Because I think a lot of that information, the pro-wolf crowd for sure will take what you just said and be like, that's it's just
It'll never happen.
yeah, and
bullshit.
there's no recent history of them attacking. That doesn't happen. They don't attack people. It's like, well, you're comparing like a modern day data set that's a totally different world.
Yeah.
But if you look far enough back, like it was a problem.
Yeah.
So why would it not become a problem again?
Yeah. When the wildlife's gone, and the livestock is put away,
Yeah.
right, you're gonna get young ladies that are jogging on trails.
Yeah, it might be.
You know,
Yeah, it could be a real threat.
It is going to be a real threat. If you look in one of those books that I mentioned, I believe it's Wolves in Russia, but and maybe it's a wolf. Anyway, I believe in the 1880s, I believe it was 1886 in Paris, France, a single wolf terrorized that city, I believe, for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it killed like 30-some women and 40-some children,
It's
but
wild.
never a man. You know, and so a wolf is so smart, he's going to determine if that's a young girl, if that's a young lady that's
He
running.
figured out a target that
Yes,
worked.
yes, and it's going to happen, and that's my biggest fear. My boys will never see wildlife like you and I did.
Right.
It's going to be gone. You know, it just is. It's a reality.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be the threat. You know.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see like how that all plays out because it's it's an issue.
until wolves are hunted, they just don't have any respect. for
Yeah,
man.
which makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Why
Yeah.
should they?
Right.
You know, they're
Right.
smart enough animal to realize that.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. They just keep pushing and pushing to see
Yeah.
what the boundary is. And when they get shot, they back off. You know,
Yeah.
if they really get hunted, they really back off.
Sure.
I don't have any fear of wolves in Idaho. If I'm out there camping, I'll take my grandkids. I have no fear really
Yeah.
of wolves. In Oregon? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, unhunted population.
Unhunted population.
Yeah, yeah.
California? Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
which is absolutely. I mean, it's not just wolves. There's a lot of. I saw that in interaction with when they did hunt grizzlies in BC. I've been in areas where they were hunted and areas where they were never hunted. It's almost like a different species.
it really is.
People
It really is.
People who think that is like made up or some sort of propaganda, they're just naive.
Yeah.
Man. It's
yeah.
a thing.
Or absolutely refuse.
Yeah.
To
Acknowledge it.
acknowledge what the actual science is.
Yeah.
You know,
Which
it's,
is-
they're running off of emotions.
Yeah.
Instead of science.
And you don't have to make much of an. I mean, they're not dumb animals. They figure it out.
Yeah.
You know.
And especially a wolf.
Yeah, they get it. figured
Smartest
out.
one out there.
But anyways, Greg, we better wrap it up. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Bart.
We'll do another one, dude.
Love to.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, man.
If you enjoyed this content, do me a huge favor. Subscribe on whatever platform you consume it on. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever works for you guys. Everything else is on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. Go there and it's going to be very apparent to you that I work my ass off just to not have a real job. All the hunts I guide, all the seminars I put on, all the unique experiences I offer, and the membership site, all the details are there.